Welcome everyone. This is a super exciting learning lab where we're going to be talking a lot about how to automate our analyses. And this is something that hits personally very close to home because this is something that I use, and I'm going to tell you a story in this presentation about how I was able to actually save about 20 hours of my work week by automating various tasks that I was doing. So this is a really important one. We also have a surprise. We're going to be presenting a Shiny application that will actually automate an email that you can send to whoever you want. The idea is you're going to be able to send emails to your bosses, to your peers, and automate that whole process of being able to quickly do an analysis and then type up an email and hit the enter button and send it out to whoever you need to send it to. Okay, so this is Google Trends automation. We're going to be using a lot of Google Trends in this. We're going to be using the Gmail API, and we're also going to be using R and Shiny, and also R Markdown as well for the PDFs. If this is your first learning lab, the structure is we're going to do about 20 minutes of presentation. Then we're going to do about 30 to 40 minutes of demo, and then I'm going to recap with some pro tips and give you guys some ideas of how you can best automate your work at the end of this. So David, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. I'm David Curry, the founder of Sure Optimize, and we help companies get more customers online using marketing analytics and website optimization. And I'm here to help Matt do these learning labs. They're so much fun. And we love kind of interacting with the community and getting feedback on topics. So really excited to be here with you guys.
And I am Matt. Thank you for that, David. I'm Matt Dancho. I am the founder of Business Science, and my number one goal is to help you be able to connect data science with your business to help improve your abilities, to help you automate your workflows, and to also help you really be able to provide your company a lot of power through web applications and through data science. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on. We've got a lot in store for 2020, and this learning lab is just one small piece of it. So you're going to get a taste. This learning lab, we're now on lab 27, and this is automation. So we're going to be talking about automating Google Trends, but if you missed some of the previous labs, there's Learning Lab 26, which was machine learning for customer journey, talked about path splitting and how to analyze Google Analytics data, and also apply machine learning algorithms to be able to detect the customer journey. We talked about multi-channel attribution in Lab 25, with, again, Google Analytics data, and then Lab 24 was on A/B testing, where we talked about the Infer library. So this is the Marketing Analytics series. If you've missed any of those, they're available in Learning Labs Pro, and you will have lifetime access to those as long as you're a subscriber to the LL Pro program. So speaking of Learning Labs Pro, what it is once every 2 weeks, we do these Learning Labs live. It's free for anyone to attend. But if you want any of the code and also any of the bonuses, you will have to sign up for the Learning Labs Pro membership to get those. Just so you guys understand, we've already done 26 of these, and we release new ones every 2 weeks. So it's kind of like continuous learning. It's jet fuel for your brain is what I call it. But it's to keep you going. So that way you never plateau. You're always learning something new as a data scientist. All right, agenda for today. We have a jam-packed session as usual. And David, you can attest to this. I don't think we've had one in the past 10 learning labs that have gone under an hour and a half. So probably expect the same here.
Yeah, we try, but it doesn't work. It's just so much info.
We do our best, but there's always hundreds of lines of code, and it just takes time to go through it. So we've got a demo. We've got a Shiny app that I'm going to show you. And the Shiny app, what it does is it emails reports to coworkers. So here's a little picture of that Shiny app. And then here's a picture of the Google Trends report that it'll email as an attachment to people. We'll talk about why automation. And I'm going to talk about my specific kind of reason that I what I was able to do personally to get 20 hours a week of my life back. We'll talk about the automation workflow, different kind of the workflow that we're going to go through in this lesson. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time on the demo. We're going to be using Google Trends, Gmail, or Markdown for PDF reports, and then Shiny, a web application, which is kind of like the interface to this automation. And then what we'll do is we'll end with some pro tips and some learning and a learning guide. And I have 3 really cool pro tips that are going to help you to be able to think about automation in a new way. All right. So first thing I want to do, I want to go through a demo with you. I want to show you this application that I have running here. So this web app, what it does is it's just kind of an interface to an analysis. So on the left hand, we've got analysis. And then on the right hand, we have an API to connect up with our Gmail. So what happens is I can type in different search terms here. So if I want to do, we'll say AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure. And if I hit the Run Analysis button, behind the scenes, it's running an analysis. It takes a few seconds because it's got to pull in the data from Google Trends, and there it updates. So now I have AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. So now I can see exactly what's happening. And then these are the 3 graphics that actually will end up going in my report. And what I can do is I can quickly analyze these to be able to see different insights. And what I have right here is then a quick way that I can just email somebody. So if my boss is gtrendy184@gmail.com, that's his email address. And then I can type in a subject here for my email, and then I can say, hey boss, I'm writing myself. My boss at Business Science is Matt. I report to him. And I can tell them, hey, here's the Google Trends report on cloud technologies. I'm seeing a big uptick in AWS searches here. And let's inspect some AdWords. So we've got the related terms over here. We might want to write something about, we might want to talk and check out some AdWords for AWS Amazon, AWS S3, AWS EC2. So I can write that here in the body of the email. Let's check out AWS Amazon, AWS S3, and AWS EC2, because these are the top related searches that we're going after, because we want to get in front of people who are searching for AWS. So I've just modified that information, and you can see that here. And then I'm going to click send the report. So if all goes well, what I'll do is go over to my email, and this is gtrendy184@gmail.com, and hopefully that'll work. If I refresh, there it is. I got my Google Trends report. I just got it at 2:09 p.m. and I can click the email, open it up, and this is to my boss, GTrendy. And you can see, hey Matt, here's the Google Trends report. Let's check out AWS, Amazon, AWS S3, AWS EC2. My boss then looks at the report and he sees the same information that I saw, and he looks over here at AWS and sees those are the 3 top related searches. He agrees with me. He says, yeah, let's check them out. Let's put some money behind those AdWords. Mm-hmm. So that is kind of the idea with this application. It's Shiny is just the interface here, and it's a way for us to kind of automate the things that used to take us a very long time, which would be to do, write a script to analyze different search terms. I can type in any search terms I want. Now, I've only in the app, I only have 5 search terms in here that I'm letting myself search, but I could add more if I wanted to. And it's just a way to save you some time. All right. So that's what we're going to be moving towards building today. And I do want to let you know that the Learning Labs Pro members are going to get all of the code to build this application. Everyone else, don't worry. We're still going to go through all of the analytics, all of the workflow to get there, but we're not going to give you the app. So the app is for Learning Labs Pro members.
Hey
Um,
Matt, before we move on, I just want to jump in. I know we're primarily talking about automation and taking your analysis and putting it through a workflow so it can save time. But since we're using Google Trends as a demonstration, I just really want to quickly go over what Google Trends is.
sure.
For those who don't know, Google Trends is a free tool from Google, and you can search for the popularity of search terms. So Matt's using AWS and Google Cloud, and this API is then talking to Google's database and coming back and giving you a time series of information on the popularity of those
Yeah.
search terms.
Yeah. And I'm pulling Google Trends up right now. So Google Trends is a website and you can literally type in, anything you want. So if I wanted to look up the trends on Docker, for example, and then if I look at the trends from 2004 to present, I can see these trends. So what this API does is it allows us to pull in and do these searches automatically for us. So we don't have to
Yeah.
actually go to the website. And so we can have a quicker way to get this data.
Yeah. And the
Okay.
reason it's so important for marketing is just so that you can understand important search terms. It's market research. You can use it for content marketing. You can use it for SEO analysis, which is really cool because you could essentially do things like compare your most popular content to search terms in this type of analysis and see how it compares over time.
Yeah.
Um,
And since we're also talking about Google Trends and automation, so we've just hit Google Trends, just so everyone's aware, automation is just the process of automating anything. So it doesn't need to be specifically Google Trends,
yeah.
although that's the example that we're going to show in this. But it's really when I talk about automation, I'm talking about the ability to use code to generate PDF reports instead of you actually clicking buttons to do that. The advantage
Yeah.
to automation is that tasks that you normally take, a long time, like if you're doing something in Excel, you can often automate a lot of that stuff in R. And then that way it only takes you seconds, something that used to take 5, 6, 7 hours to do. So
Sure.
that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Okay. All right. So I'm going to tell you a story now. I want to tell you a personal journey about how I was able to free up about 20 hours per week of my life. And it's something that I think it will resonate with a lot of people because I used to see this all the time at the companies that I've worked at where the people, they never seem like to have any free time because they're always so busy doing, all of these tasks that are kind of repetitive. So this is my story with automation, and um, it dates back to probably 5 or 7 years ago now. So at the last company I was working at, I was a technical person, so I'm a mechanical engineer by background. But as I was climbing in the company, they started to recognize I had skills outside of just engineering. So they started to get me more involved with sales. So at one point, I became a sales manager. So I was overseeing both the engineering department, and then I had an additional additional responsibility over the sales, a portion of the sales group that did these large technical projects. So I managed a technical sales team, and I noticed very quickly that there was a lot of things that happened very routinely, like these reports that I had to build, each week, and it was just a nightmare. I mean, these processes were a headache. I was constantly, so this is me in the middle. I was constantly meeting with my team, and it was taking time out of their schedules to meet with me. And it was just, I always felt like there was a better way. So I was building these reports, and those reports literally consumed probably 20 hours per week because I was just putting data. I was meeting with each member individually or in meetings. I was collecting data as they were speaking, trying to write down what they were working on, trying to capture everything so I could put it into my report and highlight the important points to my boss, who was at that point the VP of sales. So just to give you an idea, one weekly report probably costs about 5+ hours per week, 2 hours in meetings, 2 hours creating the report, you know, recreating everything in Excel, doing a 30-minute summary email to my boss to point them to the important spots. And a big thing was there was lots of errors. So I was meeting with these people and they were just going off of memory from what they were working on. And a lot of times they didn't have exact dates or exact times that they in all of the critical information, like the value of the project that they were working on and so on. So this process was very time intensive, but it was also full of errors. And what I felt like was one of these. I felt like a hamster just spinning constantly on a treadmill, but never getting anywhere. So I'm this hamster in a wheel, and literally I'm not making any progress. I'm spending 50+ hours a week at my job, you know, taking time away from my family to try and do the best I can. But I always feel like I'm putting out fires, and I always feel like I'm just working on these non-value added reports. So what did I do? Well, the first thing I did was I actually used good old Microsoft Access. And this is, again, 5-7 years ago. I didn't know about R at that point in time. I wasn't using R very frequently, but I was good with Excel. So I figured I could pick up Microsoft Access. And I found out a way to build a database with a front end. So the front end looked like this, where people would just enter the customer information, and then behind it, it had a database. So that was the first step. I built a database. The second thing I did was I spent time training the people that I was working with. So I wanted them to understand, this is how you use this tool. This is how it's going to help. All you need to do is you need to bring that front end up when you're working on your project. As soon as you get that project in, just type in, the minimum information that you need, create a record in the database, and then as you work on that project, you can fill out the remaining information. And then what I did, because often what happens is you train these people and then they decide to go back to the old way. I made them accountable because they didn't get any credit for the work that they were doing if I didn't see it in the database. So once they saw this credit being applied to the database, they then integrated that into their process. So that way, instead of me meeting with them, they were they were saving time because they didn't need to have a meeting with Matt, and they were just able to enter their information in here and it got plugged up into the database. So what did I do on my end? Instead of meeting with everybody, what I could do is I could just pull that information out of the database and have these different, now again, I didn't have Shiny back in the day. It was mainly through Access, but the same type of concept. I was able to build these analytical tools so that way I could automate the majority of my information. So I had my analysis right here. I had the ability to type in my email and get everything drafted up. And then I just click the send button. It sends the report off to my my manager or to whoever needs to see the report. So what this did was it reduced my time. And what happened was I started doing this for all of my reports that were costing me so much time. So I got out of the hamster wheel. And now I feel like this. Freedom.
That's a good feeling.
So it's an awesome feeling. About 20 hours per week that I had now free. And, I felt like I could go take a vacation. I felt like my family liked it because, I was getting home from work on time. And I liked it because I could do more of this now. I could explore. If I had an idea, how I could help the business, I could then spend time doing it because I knew I had now, so many hours per week that I could spend learning new things. I could spend exploring and pulling the thread on different insights that I have. And what that did was it resulted in a lot of promotions. And I'm telling you, people literally saw me as the guy that could do, he was so productive because, and they didn't realize, I had all this stuff automated. They just saw that I was pumping out reports left and right, that the boss liked the insights I was giving him. I was giving them new ideas. And that's what they really loved, was that, hey, they didn't even ask me to do something, but I was already looking into it. And I was 2 steps ahead. So when my boss came to me, he had the answer right there. So it was just a really good situation. And I know for a fact that if you apply the same tools, you're going to be able to get the same results. Lots of promotions. Company's going to love you for this. So what did I do? I invested my time. I learned R, Shiny, and the Tidyverse. That's how I spent, once I built that Access database and started to automate some of these things, then I could spend my time learning some of these newer tools and techniques and really getting ahead of the curve rather than always feeling like I'm putting out fires and feeling like I'm in the hamster wheel. So that is my personal story. And I know that there's a ton of other people that have stories out there like that. And I know R and Shiny and the tools that we're going to be talking about today are pieces that help you kind of get there. So we're going to be focusing on a specific automation workflow today. And this is going to be automating Google Trends reporting. So the idea here is that that app is the end kind of automation that you want to build, and you've got some sort of data. It happens to be Google Trends data for this particular case, but it can be any data source. It could be a database that your people are logging information into on the inquiries that they're getting for sales inquiries. It could be manufacturing data. It could be anything. So what we're going to be focusing on here is kind of a 3-step process where we first come up with some sort of analysis script. And this is just a one-time analysis. We're going to analyze some Google Trends data. We're going to use dplyr and ggplot2. We're going to connect to the Google Trends API and wrangle and visualize some data. Then in step 2, what we do is we make a report template, and that's with our Markdown. And this is the template that'll generate the PDF for us. And we're going to be able to change different parameters of that template, and it's going to change the output. So we'll show you how to do parameterize our Markdown. And then we're going to show you how to connect up with the Gmail API so you can send that automated email that we were just talking about. So when I click that send button, it fired a script to the Gmail API to say, hey, take this report, send it to your boss. And then step 3, which is we'll briefly touch on, but this is again for the pro members. They're going to get the Shiny app that they can automate this whole entire process, and that Shiny app is just basically the container that allows you to do your work super fast. Okay. All right. So let's go on to the demo. We've got a lot of code here to get through. So what I'm going to do is, just so the pro members, so they see this recording, I want to go through a few of the different pieces here. So there's a bunch of different folders here. We're not going to use cron. Originally, I was going to use cron for this, but I decided to do a Shiny web app instead. The data that we have is going to be, I was saving it in these RDS files, but we're actually not even going to be saving the data in this. Instead, what we're going to be doing is just connecting up with the Google API and reading data in on an as-needed basis. The reports that we create, the reports are going to be saved in this reports folder. So you can see there's a bunch of reports I've created. These are all because they're automated. So they have kind of a numeric system where it's the date, and then the T separates the time that they were created. And then it has trends report here at the back end. And you can click open one of these, and all it is just a Google Trends report for the particular timestamp. Okay. The scripts here, we're actually not going to need to use that either. So really, it's just the reports folder, to be honest, that we're going to be using. And then I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to skip. So this is the project. We have a template here that we're going to make. We have the Shiny app that we're building, and then we have the analysis and the automation scripts. So to get started, what I'm doing is I'm opening up this O1 trends analysis here. So that's what's open here. And what this is going to be doing is primarily going to be the analysis portion. So if you never use the Google Trends API, there's a GTrends R package, and that's what connects up to Google Trends. So I'm running this line here. I'm going to pull in the normal libraries here: tidyverse, lubridate, tidyquant, and then the FS, which is for the file system. If you the main function in the Google Trends API is, I'm going to open this up. So I'm now on section 2, Google Trends API. The main function is this GTrends function. So if you run that, you've got keywords that you can add in here. So I'm going to be adding like Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure as my search terms. And then there's a couple other parameters here. The important ones are going to be this geo and the time. So I'm going to set the geography to US and the time span to all, so all time. So to use this function, all we do is we create some search terms, and this is just AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and then we use this, we pipe the search terms into the GTrends function. And this takes a few seconds to run because it actually is pulling in a lot of data because I have this time span set to all. So it's now finished, and then we can explore this object. So it's in my environment now. I have this GTrends object, and it's a list of 3, and it's got a bunch of different information. We're primarily going to be interested in this interest over time, the interest by region, I believe, and then the related queries. So those are the 3 that we're going to be focusing on today. So I'm moving into section 3 now, inspecting the trends. So this is just a way to get the names of each of the different pieces of that list. So again, it's a list of 7, and these are the 7 different pieces in that list. And each one of those contains a data frame of information. So if I want to check out this first one, which is interest over time, I can take that GTrends list, and then I can pluck out that interest over time. And I see here that it's a data frame. Okay. And I'm just going to modify hits. I'm going to make hits numeric and turn it into a tibble so I can read it a little bit better. So I can see that the interest over time has a date, a timestamp, a number of hits, which I've now made numeric, and then it's got some other information like the keyword and so on. So each one of these keywords now, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, I now have 3 different groups of keywords with the full time span of hits for that particular search term. And that is what David was talking about. That's the search interest. We can use a little bit of ggplot to make a nice visualization out of this. And for each of those search terms, we've got a nice visual of the trends over time. And again, it dates back, it's I believe a daily frequency. It's a monthly frequency. So we have every month from 2004 onward. Okay. So we can do the same thing with geography next. So that GTrends list has this interest by region. And what that does is it gives us a location. So these are all of the state names in the US. So the region is the US. And you can see which have the highest hits as a percent, as a number from 1 to 100. So it's been scaled. And what we can do then, there's actually this thing called map data, and we can grab some information about latitude and longitude, and we can grab some region so on each of those states, and we can combine these 2 information now. So if I say the states tibble here, and so if I run this piece here, it saves a tibble called states tibble. So that's this thing here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to join it by the region and the location. So that's what I'm doing right here, is I'm combining these 2 data sets into a combined data set now that has the longitude for each of the locations. And what I can do then is I can use ggplot again, and I can use this thing called chord map, and I can actually create polygons to approximate the states. So it looks something like this when I run this. So now I have AWS has a plot here, and I'll make this a little bigger so we can see it. Takes a second to refresh. Okay, so I've got AWS here, I've got Azure here, and then I have Google Cloud. So we can see that AWS and Azure are pretty similar, but Google Cloud has completely different trends, and it looks like mainly the Dakotas seem to be the highest trending for Google Cloud. And I don't know why. Maybe they need AWS for some reason or another, or Google Cloud for some reason or another. So we now have analyzed the geographies, and then the next thing that we can do is move on to the last one. So if I look at my names, the last one I want to look at is this thing called related queries. And what related queries are is when you plug in a search term, what Google will do is, or Google Trends will do, is give you the search terms that are most correlated with that term. So, or use that term as part of a bigger term. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my number of terms to 10. I'm going to skip some of these lines just to keep this demo moving. And then I'm going to create this thing called my top N related searches. So what this does is it's a bunch of dplyr code. We're going to take our trends list. We're going to pluck out the related queries, and then we're going to filter to the top related queries. So these are just those with top in this column. And then we're going to make the subject, it's a character right now, so we need to convert that to numeric. I do that here, or I make the interest, I'm sorry, interest. I'm making a new column called interest, and it's now numeric. And then I'm going to do a little bit of extra. So I'm going to select just the keyword value interest. So a little more data manipulation here. Just select keyword value interest. I'm going to group by the keyword. So now there's 3 groups in here: AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure. And then I'm going to arrange interest descending. So that way this is ordered. And then I'm going to slice from 1 to n. So n terms is 10. So 1 to n terms. So now it's a total of 30 by 3, the size of the tibble. So now it only has 30 rows because 10 for each row. And then I'm going to ungroup. So that removes the groups. And I'm going to add a value column, which takes this value here and reorders it based on the interest. So when I do that, I now have a data frame that is well formatted for a ggplot, and I can create this plot here that looks something like this, where I've got each of the search terms, and I have each of the different groups that they belong to. So AWS Amazon is the top search term for people searching AWS, followed by Amazon or AWS S3, AWS EC2. So what you could do is you could think ways that your marketing department may want to write a blog on AWS S3. There's a lot of search interest out there, or AWS EC2. You might want to target those types of AdWords as part of a bigger ad campaign to be able to target the types of words that don't cost a whole lot of money but have a high search volume. So that's kind of how you can use this analysis. And what you want to do then is put that into a report that you can send to other people, so that way they can make some actionable decisions. So I want to pause right here, and I want to make one statement, and this is my most important statement that you will hear all day from me, is that never automate anything that doesn't result in an actionable decision by the person you're giving it to. So, I've done a lot of automations in the past. They haven't all been successful. The ones that have been successful are reports that people can then take and do something with, meaning your marketing group gets this report, they see this information, you point them in the right direction, and then they're able to write a blog article, based on the information they see, or they're able to create a new ad campaign that pulls in a lot of revenue because of something you did. So if they can't do anything like that, then it's not worth automating. You should probably just scrap that report in general, because it's not adding value to your audience. So that's my number one rule. You will not hear me say anything more important than that today regarding automation. Only automate things that are actionable and add value to the recipient. Okay. All right, so that's the analysis. The next thing in the automation workflow that we want to do is we really, before we can start coming up with automation scripts and everything, we need to create a template for our PDF that we're going to make. So that's what the next piece is. I'm going to open up this Google Trends report template. I'm going to close out of some of these that I don't need. And what this is if you've never heard of R Markdown, this is what we call a parameterized R Markdown document. And what it does is it has this up here in the top section. So this is kind of metadata for your report. It's basically template information. So your report has a title, your report has an author, your report has a date, and I'm using the Lubridate Now function to print the timestamp. And then it has an output format and so on. And then it has, and it can be either HTML output or it can be a PDF document. And then it has these things called parameters. And these are what I'm talking about when I say parameterized R Markdown, because these parameters can be changed, and then you can use these later on in your report by calling params $, and whatever it's called up here, search terms. That's how you can access them. So this is your way to get variables into your PDF documents or your HTML reports. So I'm just going to click the knit button real quick, and I'm going to show you what this template does. So it utilizes these search terms here. It's going to take a second to run, but basically what it's going to do is it's going to produce a report for me in HTML format, and it looks something like this, where it's got my plots in here. So basically what I did, the report's actually really easy. Once you have this analysis done, it's a lot of copying and pasting. So you copy and paste your libraries in here. You then create your first section, which is right here. It's just an H1 header, which is for my report search terms. And I'm creating a tibble of search terms and passing it to this knitter cable function. And it looks something like this: AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and it makes a little table for me. Okay. The next thing that I'm doing is I'm then taking those search terms and I'm reading, I'm using the Google Trends function to read those search terms and pulling that information in. And then this code is the exact same as what I've got over here. I just copy this piece over here, and that goes right into here. And then you can make your plot, and you can do the same thing for the next one here. You just copy and paste that code in, and you format it the way that you want. So this makes right now it's set up to make an HTML report, but all of these parameters that are up here, so right now it's set up for HTML, these are all adjustable. Anything that's in here is adjustable. So we're going to be changing this to PDF, and we're going to be changing these search terms to whatever we want. Okay, so now that you've got an R Markdown document that's saved as Google Trends Report template.rmd, so that's the file that we have saved over here, what we can then do is create an automation script. And all this does is it's just a script that I can run to do without having to click the knit button over here. So I don't have to click this knit button again. Now what I can do is I can run code to create that report for me. And I can also run code down here to do a Gmail API automation. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of walk down through this script here. So this is the automation script. The libraries that we're going to use here for the automation is the Gmail API. because we're going to actually be emailing this report through Gmail. So there's this package called Gmail R. We're going to run that. We're going to load our Markdown library, which allows us to render reports, PDF reports, without actually having to click the knit button. We're going to load tidyverse, lubridate, and FS for the file system. So here are my report parameters. So I'm going to set up in section 2, I'm going to set up some key parameters. And these are things that I'm actually physically just writing in here kind of as initial setup parameters. So when I run my report, I want it to use AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or we can change that and we can change it to a different set of terms, and you can type in literally whatever you want, and then this is going to go to Google Trends. So why don't I do this? I'm going to change the search terms to Docker and Git. And then I'm going to set up some email parameters. So the email that it's going to go to is it's going to go to my boss, gtrendy184@gmail.com. The subject of that email is going to be Google Trends. Here's what the body text is going to look like, something like this. Hey, Matt, here's a report from Matt. Okay, so these are all variables in my environment right now. And what I can do then is I can write a script then to automate the report. That's the first step. So I'm going to create a file path that I want to save this report in. So I'm going to use the lubridate now function, and that produces something that looks like this, a timestamp, where I've got the date and I've got the hour, minute, and second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to modify that. I'm going to replace all punctuation with underscores, and I'm going to replace all spaces with a T. So it creates something that looks like this. And then I'm going to append that using the strc function with underscore trends report.pdf. And if you notice, this looks a lot very similar to, in my reports folder, the file names. And if you notice that, you're correct, because this is going to be the file name. So that's the file path. I'm going to save that as a parameter called file path. And I'm going to use this function called rmarkdownRender then, and I'm going to have the input as my template, which is just this Google Trends report template.rmd file. I'm going to set the output format to PDF document. So if you remember, it was initially set to HTML document. Now we're going to set it to PDF document. We're going to set the output file to this file path, which is just the name of the file that I want it to save it as. And that's going to be what's stored over here in the reports folder. And then the output directory is the reports directory, which is the folder name. And the parameters, which is the key piece, is going to be my search terms. Now notice I've changed this now to Docker and Git. So those are going to be my search terms. So basically it's going to overwrite these terms with Docker and Git. Okay. So when I run this, it's going to take a second because it's got to download for Docker and Git all of the Google Trends history since 2004. And there it's done. So now what has happened is it's just stored that as a file in here. And if I scroll down here to the bottom at 2:44 p.m. today, which was just a minute ago, I made this report, and it looks something like this. There we go. So this is my Docker Git report done at 1:22:14:44:46, which is just a minute ago, and it's got all my keyword history and everything. So we've just successfully written code that creates these PDFs. Now what we need to do, and this is the only tough part, is the Gmail API. We need to set that up. So for anyone who's never used the Gmail API, it's a little bit of a learning curve because to set it up, you have to register an app with the Google Developer Console. And then you have to, and the easiest way to do that is to follow the instructions that are here at this link here. And you can just Google Gmail R, and this is like one of the first links that comes up. But so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this link in here. Also put it in the chat. So I put this link in the chat, and this is the GitHub repo from Gmail R, and the instructions here. So this is kind of like how you use it, but the setup is really where you want to focus on. So what we're doing is, in order to use this, you need to create a Google project for it. So the easiest way is to follow this Python quick start, and you just click this button here, enable the Gmail API. And what it'll do is it'll run some stuff. Follow the instructions. So you won't see this. You will have to create a new API, and you'll just want to create that. Let me go back, and then to get this set up, then basically you're going to download this thing called a client configuration. That's a JSON file, and we're going to use that in the API. And then you just basically follow these instructions to set it up. And then once you're finished that, you're going to have this JSON file, and then you can also do this OAuth token caching. But what we're doing is we're running remotely, and we're going to kind of follow this process of doing the Gmail auth configure, providing it the path to our app credentials, and then we're going to authenticate with our user email address to basically to allow us to access our Google, our normal Google API profiles. So that's basically it. So once you follow these instructions here, you'll be able to set up this piece here. So you're going to give it the path, and right now my credentials are located in my downloads folder. So you just run this, and then you run this authorization. So I'm going to give it the email gtrendy184@gmail.com, because that's what I set this app up with. That's the email account that's associated with that app. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Gmail R. So you start off with this just function to create an email, and it's got a body, it's got some attributes and so on. And then you progressively add, first I'm adding the to. So I'm changing the to GTrendy. So this would be the person you email to. And then let me open this up just a little more so we can see it. And then as I add the from, I'm at, my from is now GTrendy. My subject is now, where's the subject at? Google Trends. So you can name that subject whatever you want. The body is the body that I saved previously. So when I run this, doesn't look like it added it in. Make sure I have that stored up here. So body, and then run that. Yeah, for some reason it's showing null still. And then attach a file. And now this is the key piece. You want to send an attachment, so you give it the reports. So the path to the report and the file path that you just created. So that's this file path here. So when you do that, you can create an email, and then I can run this GM send message, and then it runs that. And if you get this ID down here, that means it's completed. And if I go to my Google Trends, if I go to my inbox now and refresh it, I now have Google Trends. And Richard just sent me a nice email. Thank you so much, Richard. I appreciate that. I should get a raise. I'll have to talk to my boss about that. So
Wow.
this is the report that I just sent. That was good. That's clever. And yeah, so this is Google Trends. So with all of that information, now what's really cool is you can make an app, and that's what I want to do next. I want to show you kind of what I did. So this is the our markdown document. This is what we call Flex Dashboard. It's something I teach in the 102 course in depth. I teach you how to make these, and I'm not going to show you this this information. There's a little bit to it, but basically I'm putting in the different plots, and then I'm putting in a section for email, and I have this front matter, which I want to make sure that everyone knows. So for the Google or for the Learning Lab Pro members, the things that you need to change to get this to run. So once you get this automation working, you'll want to change this to whatever email that is associated with the Gmail API that you're using. You want to change this. This is your path to your credentials. And we use that just right here. It looks like I misspelled credentials. So credentials. So you want to change that. And what this does is it associates that app's credentials. And then the default search terms are just what I have the app set up to initially start with. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. So when you run this document, it creates an application over here. And I have to click the run analysis button for it to work. So right now it's running that analysis. I see the question about 3.6.0 or 3.6. Yeah, I'm using 3.6 right now. All right, there it goes. So you can see it's got all the stuff in here. Now it looks kind of weird because it's not set up for mobile. But if I open it in a new window, you can see it looks a lot better. So if I'm on, and you wouldn't, realistically, you probably wouldn't be using this application on your on a mobile phone anyways. So the key idea here is my email automation stuff's over here. So this is going to be the body of the email that I type up, who it's going to go to, so I can change that as needed. And you can even build on this app. You can actually load in, have a history of emails that you've emailed in the past, or you can add multiple emails if you want to send to a group of people. You can, have different subjects that you customize, have different bodies that you customize, have different search terms or whatever you want, completely different analysis. And you just follow the same type of process. So the idea here is, okay, I've got AWS, Google, Azure. I've run my analysis. I've now looked at each of the different each of the different main parts of the analyses. I've formulated some opinion as to what I want to tell my boss. I type that up in here, fill out this information, and click send report. Behind the scenes, what's happening is you can see this stuff is getting run. You've got your report that was just generated. And then now if I go back to my email and refresh it, if all went well, I should have, sometimes it takes a minute. Run that.
Well, it's always something.
Yeah, it's getting hung up here, but as we saw in the beginning of the lab, it worked just fine. Sometimes too, yeah, so this GM send message is getting a little bit hung up. So the easiest thing to do is you just restart your R session, and then we should be able to just run down through this script here. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the demo. We'll now move on to pro tips. So what I want to show is a couple of different key things when I think of automations. First, this comes from my initial story, and this is based on my experience. So one of the things that can really help reduce the amount of time that you're spending on automations is my first pro tip. Get data into a database, and you're probably thinking, oh, this makes, duh. Well, from my experience, 90%, probably like 90% or more of processes that are taking up a lot of time in your organization could be put into a database and streamlined, just like that automation workflow that I was talking about before, where my salespeople would get these quotes and these orders, and they take a lot of time to manage, and they just need to log that information. And what that does is it gets you out of this kind of this routine of having to meet with everyone. And don't get me wrong, meetings are important in some cases, but these repetitive meetings can oftentimes be gotten away from, and just have people enter the information into a database that gets stored up here. Pro tip number 2. This is an important one. Shiny can be used as an interface. All it is just it's a front end. It's a way to interact with an analysis. It's a way to automate a report. And what's really nice is for these processes that take a lot of time, you can put your analysis right alongside your report, and you can type as you're looking at all of these reports, build up your body, and then you click the send button, and literally that will save you. It saved me 5+ hours of work per report a week. And that is an amazing benefit. And then my third pro tip, so some processes you can't do this with, but a lot of processes you can just remove yourself entirely from them. You're a middleman as a data scientist. A lot of times what you can do is you can just put your analysis into an application and then give your people access to it. So this is kind of a higher order. Like if you want to go from, automating your analysis, so it still takes me, time to type this information in. But what you really want to do is you want to get yourself out of the mix entirely. And if you give the business apps, and this is what they crave, this is way better than sending a report. This is allows your audience to take the application, and as long as they're trained on how to use it, it allows them to do it entirely independently. And this is the ultimate thing, because then they can, as needed, load up Google Trends themselves, as needed, do their own analysis if they've been trained on how to do that analysis. So this particular app is coming in a course soon. This is an employee attrition prevention application that uses H2O machine learning, dplyr, ggplot2, Lime for explainable machine learning, and actually comes up with a recommendation plan depending on what the probability of a person leaving the company is. So it's an employee retention way to keep people from leaving the company. So those are my pro tips. And what I want to say is you've seen a lot in this Learning Lab. I mean, you've seen kind of a full scale analysis. It wasn't, too complex, some basic visualizations, we didn't do any machine learning or anything, but you can expand it as far and as wide as you would like. You can add better tools in like H2O. You can add more visualizations and more things that are going to really help your business be able to operate at a high level. So the key is that you just need to learn how to do it, and that's where I can help you. So I want to talk about this 4-course R-Track system. There's 4 courses, and you've got the 101 course, which is your data science foundations. It takes about 7 weeks or so to complete. You've got a framework that I use, and you basically start at the beginning, learning the foundations of data analysis. So everything that we did in that analysis piece, all of the dplyr operations, working with text, working with time series, being able to manipulate data. You learn that. You learn visualization, and then you even learn some machine learning and some business reporting, and some functional programming. Then in the 201 course, which is the more advanced course, that's where you learn machine learning and business consulting. Now this one takes a little bit longer to complete, but you solve an end-to-end employee attrition problem. So the same problem that we saw here, you're doing the full analysis before we get to building the app. So that's what you learn in this course. You learn how to use H2O, you learn how to use Lime, you learn how to create pre-processing recipes and do a lot of advanced analyses. And you also follow a business consulting framework, which is one that I actually use and have used with a lot of different companies. And then the last piece here is the web application. So there's 2 courses there. There's a 102 and a 202. So in 102, you learn Flex Dashboard, the same technology that created this one. And then in 202, you learn Shiny, but it's more advanced. It's a full stack web application. So you learn how to do a MongoDB backend. You learn how to put it into production on AWS. You learn how to basically build this app here. If I go to my apps.business-science.io, you learn how to build this thing. It's called I call it an application library. So you can envision yourself having a bunch of different apps that you've built for your business. I'm going to look for ones with stock in them. So these two have stock. So I'm going to open this one up, and you learn how to build this one where it has authentication. So it's got different users, and you have to type in a username and password. And then it allows you to log in to this application and be able to use it. So it takes a second to load, but it pulls in the stock data, and it has different settings that you can change, and so on. And then all of this information is stored per user, so that way you can have say a team, a whole marketing team that's using this, but each of them has their own profile and so on. Okay, so that's the 4-course system. I do have a special for you. Oh, this is just a little more information. Machine learning, week 6 of the 101. That's what people really seem to be getting a lot out of. I mean, they get a lot out of the full course, but people were really loving the machine learning piece in the 101 course. They learn all of the different machine learning algorithms, like your GLM, your XGBoost, support vector machines, and so on. You learn all that in the 101. The 201 is really powerful from weeks 5 through 10. This is like what no one teaches, is how to do return on investment and take your machine learning models that you're making and explaining, and then you do what's called threshold optimization, sensitivity analysis, and you can actually build recommendation algorithms. All to optimize for ROI, which is what companies want to see. The 102 course, you build these 2 different web applications. They're, again, the Flex dashboard style, and they're predictive web applications, so they integrate XGBoost into them. And then the 202, which is the full stack, this is like creating an application that has security, encryption, and so on embedded in it. All right, so I want to give you guys an offer today, 15% off, and this is for attending Learning Labs Pro. So this is the promotional code. David, if you want to put that in. Oh, you already beat me to it. Sweet. Basically, this is the ultimate program. It's a one-stop shop. It's going to fast track you from where you are now to get you to the top, building web apps, building all the things that you've seen today, and much more advanced than that. So you're going to be able to do a lot of powerful stuff with this program. It's got 4 courses in it. It'll take you about 6 months to complete, and there's no experience required coding. As long as you have some basic Excel experience, you're probably going to be fine, as long as you start with the 101 course, and then you'll progress. In terms of a recommended path, I prefer people to go from 101 to 201, because then you get your analyses. You learn machine learning in depth, and then do 102 to 202. So you get your web applications, and you learn how to put your data science into production. But as long as you have this course under your belt, you can go this way, you can go this way. Either way is fine. Okay. Any questions?
We got through pretty much all the questions. I think that's a first. But one thing I want to say, because Franklin was just asking about the 201 and 101. And I would say that he was asking, could you skip the 201 if you've had machine learning classes before? A lot of people that have taken the 201 course first have gone back and taken the 101. Because the 101 covers so much stuff that you think you may have already known. But there's a lot of detail in there specific to the language of R and some of the more basic stuff that's really fundamental.
Yeah, So the 101 teaches you how to do all of the stuff here where you're doing the visualizations. It teaches you how to, so this is all the ggplot code. It teaches you how to do um, like the filter, the group by, the slice. And those are really, really important to have under your belt. So if you already know all this stuff, then by all means, feel free to jump into the 201. You can always go backwards. And trust me, you will not be the first person that has gone backwards if you have to go backwards. It's totally, don't feel bad about it. The key thing for me though is more important than the machine learning is the applied. Have you worked with data before? Have you worked with text? Have you worked with time series? Have you worked with ggplot2? Have you worked with per for iteration? Have you worked with built functions before? And all of that stuff, and even the R Markdown stuff. It teaches you R Markdown in week 7. So if you need to get those foundations, it's really important to take the 101.
Do you guys have any more questions about the courses, about automation? About Matt getting a pay raise?
Yeah. I like that one.
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was witty.
All right. Well, if not, I think we can wrap it up then. So I really appreciate everyone for attending, and I hope you found this lab useful. Again, LL Pro members, you're going to get the app, you're going to get all of the code, and also we've got this nice 15% off for anyone who wants to take the full program and really dive in and be able to accelerate your skills.
All right, thanks everybody. We really appreciate you sticking around, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right, thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.